there's always something else. You can end up with all the things that you say, oh, you'll be happy when, or you'll be happy, once we buy a house or once we own the car, or, everything will be good once we have this. And you just never, ever seem to get to this point where you have enough.
Welcome to Journey the Path, conversations about what life means and all the choices and feelings in between. I'm Daniel May. Today, my co-host Cade Embery and I talk about what happens when we give and receive gifts.
We've been doing quite a bit of moving, have a big skip bin out the front to throw all of our trash in.
Throwing all your trash, there's some of that, it's not Christmas presents, is it?
It probably is. It's all the Christmas presents from last year, so make room for the Christmas presents that the kids are undoubtedly going to be given this year. But every time we get a skip in, no matter how big, we always fill it. And there's just so much stuff. I think you go around looking and do the whole, if you haven't used this in a year, it's probably worth trashing.
But you might use it in 13 months, my friend.
That's true, but I have relatives who have that. You might use that in the future. And obviously there's some things which you're going to keep because you probably will. But there's plenty of stuff. I know people who you end up on an episode of Hoarders because there's just so much stuff. And once you have kids, everyone else gives them stuff. You just end up accumulating things. And there's things that people buy for Christmas purely to tick off the quota or tick off the checklist of I must give this person the Christmas present. So it's like, quick, go to the shops and there's something. And a lot of the time, those things were created purely just to be given at Christmas and then thrown away on Boxing Days. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So we're really talking about what this podcast is about, which is that whole experience of Christmas and all the presents. And I know that in the past I've talked to you and you have a real bee in your bonnet around the massive number of plastic presents that are given and thrown away and so on. And it's actually quite difficult for me to give you and your family a present. Not that I'm objecting to that. I think it's a really good principle. If I'm being selfish, I could always just force a present upon you, the ultimate act of love, which is giving you something you don't want so I can feel better. But has it always been like this for you? Or did you come to this staunch boundary around consumerism?
I mean, when I was a kid, it was about... Actually, when we were growing up, I don't think we were particularly well off. We'd have a few presents, Christmas gifts. They'd usually be, remember one year we got like a mountain bike. That didn't happen every year. One year we got like boogie boards. One year we maybe got some Lego as a set. But it would usually be like, one decent present from my family. And then there'd probably be some chocolates and maybe a couple of small presents, maybe like an action figure or something like that. However, back then, I'm talking like the 90s. And maybe my recollection of the 90s is probably going to be different and probably not going to be that detailed because I was only a primary school kid.
Thank goodness you didn't say crack or heroin. You said I was a primary school kid. Go on.
I mean, maybe this has always been the case. If I go to Kmart today, I can buy like a pair of jeans for $2. I don't know if that was always the case. I remember back in the 90s, it wasn't as easy as it is at the moment to buy just huge amounts of garbage. And maybe not even garbage, but just things. Things just weren't as cheap. Maybe we weren't as rich. But it's so easy right now to go down and you could probably spend $20 and come home with a truck full of crap. Like plastic stuff. And having seen other people, I think we've all seen that Hoarders show. Everyone knows what it is. You end up with people just accumulating things and just keeping things and storing them up until, you've got rooms and rooms full of things. I remember helping someone out who ended up in a situation like that. There was, rat poo all over the ground. It was pretty bad. There was just so much stuff. And I remember saying to the person, what was it? They had a whole bunch of stuff that was still good, as in it's still there. It's a bunch of things. However, they very clearly didn't need it. They hadn't used it for 10 years and they weren't going to use it. And it was like, but it's still good. You meet people and it's like, I've got this stamp collection. And it's like, okay, that's great. People barely care about that. People don't, and you'll always find some people out there who are in the stamp collecting society of 39 or whatever, and they're obsessed with them. But for the most part, you have these people with like big collections of things that they only mean something to the person who, because it's sentimental or nostalgic or something, or potentially there's like emotions attached to them and they haven't actually been able to disconnect from them. We had this situation last year, or was the year before, where my mother-in-law gave us this Christmas decoration thing. It was like a giant bauble, quite old, didn't really look fantastic. And she said, "Here, this was my mother's, so you should look after it because it's very special and it's very sentimental." And we were like, "We don't really need this, and we don't really have anywhere to put this, and we don't really want to store another Christmas gift because it's something that comes out like a Christmas decoration that comes out once a year, but you still have to store this thing, and it's quite big. It was like the size of a basketball almost." And it's like, "You've got to store this somewhere for the rest of the year." And it's like, "Well, we don't. What are we going to do with this?" It's like, "We don't want this." It's like, "But it's very sentimental to me because it was my grandmother's or something." And it's like, "Well, if it is very sentimental to you, why don't you keep it?" "Oh, because I got nowhere to put it and I don't want it." It's just weird that we were given this thing and it's like, "Well, you don't have anywhere to put it and you don't want it, so why are we not allowed to say we don't have anywhere to put it and we don't want it?" Um, I don't know.
Because
I don't know if
it's
that's actually
because
helpful,
it's
but it's
really
just an
hard
interesting
to
story.
it's really hard to throw away. Who wants to be the one to throw away this
Exactly.
thing that has all this significance attached to it? I hope you had a talk to your children about this and said, "Okay, this thing, we're going to hand it to you now and you're going to have to keep it forever." It's hard. It's hard if we're going to really draw the line and say, "I'm going to be the one to put that in the skip."
Well, you said something before about you're actually after the dopamine hit of giving something to someone else. Well, not always, but I'm just saying. You mentioned that is a thing, and I remember seeing that as a thing when we had my firstborn, my daughter. Out of all of my aunties and uncles and extra family, we were the first in our extended family to actually have a kid, and there were quite a lot of almost like clucky great grandparents and great aunts and things like that who really wanted their children to have kids and they hadn't had them yet, and it was just like they had this built up need to give, knit things, give gifts to a child, and they didn't really have grandchildren to do that. And then we had a child, and it was just like we just got inundated with stuff. It's great to know that people want to give you gifts and give your children gifts, and they love that. But there was definitely a lot of that, I think, happening where it was like, I feel good because I got to give a gift. And there was an interesting point where we actually couldn't close the boot on our car after a Christmas day in those early days. There was so much stuff. We ended up going home from a family member's house with just stuff. And I remember going, we have nowhere to put this. We can't even fit it in the car. We got home and it was like on Boxing Day, I'm going to have to go to I think I went to the Salvos, and I'm going to donate some of these things because she just doesn't need all these things. And so we went to the Salvos the next day, and I was carrying in like a pile of boxes of, I think there was like a dog that talks to you and a bunch of other toys or whatever. And when I walked to the front door, there were like 3 other parents that had piles that looked almost exactly the same. In fact, some of them had the same thing. I remember walking to the back to put this thing, and I put it in a pile of the same thing. There was like 30 of them. And it was amazing that the Salvos even accepted it.
Wow.
Because it's like, well, what are you going to do with these things? And there was other things like a plastic fan sprayer thing, like a water bottle with a little battery-powered fan that you'd press and it would spray, misty water on you. And someone gave that to my daughter, and it was like, it's just a useless thing. But if you went into the shops that Christmas, they had them all at the front of like Kmart and down the aisles of the stores being like, it's the new thing. It's a misting van. And people were like, oh, I got to buy something for my niece or nephew or cousin or whatever. That'll do. And you look at these things and they're literally just a bunch of plastic with a tiny little battery. And their entire purpose was basically create this so that ad hoc people will buy that at Christmas time and then give it to someone. And you just know that all of these things are going to end up in landfill. And I end up being quite frustrated that they even created them.
Yeah. I find myself wanting to give gifts that people find useful, are of significance, and won't end up in landfill, at least not for quite a while. So you've got these design parameters, right, to achieve. So the first thing is you actually have to talk to people and understand what they need. You might guess, but you might guess wrongly. So I like to dig into it and understand, or get some really valuable intel from people who know them very well in order to do that. I tend to use my 3D printers to do that because it's a really specific, bespoke gift that can really speak to them. But that means you actually have to make the effort to do that. When I started getting back into 3D printing, Samuel and I thought, cool, this is a great way to quickly pump out some great custom presents. And we found the time required to find a meaningful present actually way exceeded walking into Kmart and getting the Misty fan, right? Because the Misty fan is convenient, it looks fine, it was just what's there, and somehow that's okay. But if I wanted to make something and make it last, it actually took a lot of time to confirm the right thing. Then when you make it, it's not too long. And then it's making sure that's the thing that they want, which reduces the whole likelihood of it ending up in landfill. So that effort is actually, I've learned, is actually quite significant. So I actually start the process maybe a couple of months before Christmas so that it doesn't end up last minute and rushing to somewhere like Kmart, which is again another issue, the last minute kind of present that we end up buying. So yeah, I think about that a lot. And then the other question is, hang on, they don't seem to want anything, because some people have everything. And I'm not talking about really rich people either. I'm talking about well-off people, people who are okay. Samuel, my son, he's 16. He's got everything he needs. He's good. In fact, when he's buttonholed by, say, like my mum, who desperately wants to show him love and a present, he can't answer. I'll have a think about it. And he can't. It takes time, but he's got everything. He's cool. He's good. So that's also another,
I'd suggest that we all have, we're in that situation, and I'd suggest that we all have everything that we need. Everything else is bonus. There was this point where one morning we took away all of the devices and all of the toys from our kids, and we said, no, you can't use Nintendo, you can't use PlayStation, you can't watch the TV. We're taking all the things away. You can't play with this, can't play with that, whatever. And they all, got a little bit frustrated. And then they used their imagination and they started building this massive blanket fort in the lounge room. And they pulled apart all the couches and made this huge thing, basically made use of everything. And it was fantastic. They had a great time. They didn't fight. They all got along. They were all working together. They all came up with some creative ideas and they built some things. And they had a fantastic morning. It was great. And I think the creativity that is kind of used when you find yourself sitting there with less things, like it's not just right in front of you, I found that really beneficial for our kids. I think that's possibly the same for most people. We have everything that we could ever need. I know there's lots of people who aren't in that situation. So I don't want to say like, oh, everybody doesn't need anything. But I think there is definitely especially around Christmas, where the marketing, the shops, like Christmas is about the shops increasing sales so that businesses can make more profits and the share price can go up. Maybe potentially like there's been a bit of something lost from the earlier, folklore days where you might get a wooden toy for Christmas or something. Now it feels like it's got to be like a one-up on the previous year. Almost like the Harry Potter, is it Dudley or whatever, the people that Harry Potter lives with. I don't know if you've seen the movies, read the books, and it was like, I only got 43 presents this year. Last year I got 45. And that attitude of ungratefulness or desire for more, greed, whatever, that's something that I don't really find particularly attractive, and I don't really want our kids to end up like that. We went to a friend's house. There's probably more of an acquaintance. And they had a very big
Don't worry,
house.
I won't verify that. I won't do a background check.
Well, we went to their house. It was massive, humongous mansion. And we went in and they had like three living rooms or so. We were invited over for lunch or something. And in the living room, they had, kid you, no joke, inside the house, like a bouncing castle. They had 3 or 4 electric go-karts. They had every toy you could possibly imagine. And on the other side was like this formal dining room thing that was filled with this, I think like a whole bunch of instruments, like basically everything you could possibly buy. It was like cashed up bogans kind of deal. Then you walked out into the back, and they had this massive area which was just every Lego set you could possibly imagine. This huge table, like built thing with Lego that you could.
Mm.
It was crazy. Our kids were just like blown away. Like this is like Disneyland.
Mm.
Their children had like no respect whatsoever for their toys. And they didn't even seem to care about it. It was just like, oh yeah, whatever. That's just the bouncy castle, whatever. Our kids, kind of like Richie Rich, that movie from the '90s where it's like they go over and he's got like a roller coaster in his backyard, and the kids are just like, whoa, and he's like, yeah, but eh. And
Yeah,
I've seen
yeah.
that with so much stuff, especially looking through our kids. With the more stuff, the less anything becomes special.
Mm.
Nothing stands out. Nothing's really exciting. Together with Christmas, there's also this thing that's been happening for a few years since my daughter's been going to school, where it's now a thing, probably spread on Pinterest, where if you go to school and someone has a birthday, it's now kind of expected, or it's the done thing where the parents where the kid who has the birthday gives out birthday bags to everybody in the class. And I kid you not, I reckon there's every week we get 1 or 2 of these bags where my kids come home with a bag full of usually a mixture of lollies, confectionery, and plastic garbage. Like quite literally garbage. It'll be like a plastic frog or a plastic thing that has no purpose other than just to exist. And yeah, it's actually quite frustrating because one of them will bring it home and then they'll all fight over it about wanting it or not. And there's so much sugar. It's actually just over the top. It's oversaturated. That's probably my big issue. As you can probably tell, I've got a bee in my bonnet about it. I don't think it's healthy for our kids, and I don't know how to stop it because they get inundated with it everywhere.
I know that some primary schools, perhaps this was Samuel's primary school, if I recall correctly, they don't celebrate the birthdays because of this reason. It's actually a school policy, right? Because
Sounds like a
it
great
gets out
policy.
of
I'm all
hand.
for it.
It gets out of hand, and then there's potential people feeling
Left
bad
out
feelings because they can't afford that. With that amazing house, did you go up to the parents angrily and say, I want you to adopt me? Because it sounds like the happiest kingdom.
It actually wasn't. Didn't seem like the happiest kingdom, to be fair, either.
Yes, I understand. I think I went through a period where we were being bought amazing Star Wars gifts. This is the original trilogy, and it was great, but it actually got to a bit of a saturation point, and God bless my parents, but it was actually like, I've got this toy and I appreciate it so much, but it was just, I think a switch flipped, and maybe it was easing away from the toys at the end of primary school, where it was just started to get okay, as opposed to, oh my goodness, that kind of feeling. I'm interested in this other side of it, this other side where people are really cut if they can't give you a gift. They're really offended. They're really in, and I've seen it angry. I've had situations where people have everything. There's the Oxfam type thing where you buy a goat for someone. It's a contribution to Oxfam. That's enough money for a goat, for a community. I think my brother got me some manure one year for some place. Is he trying to send a message? And cool, that's great. But I know some people who got really offended by stuff like that. Like it's not a real gift. And some of these people are approaching the Richie Rich picture that you describe, that they weren't given a thing that they, of all people, don't need.
It's
So
like the
that's kind of
insatiable
interesting.
desire for something added.
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily about giving them something material that they lack. Maybe it's about honor. Maybe it's about face. I receive a thing, or that bump. Oh, they thought of me. And some of these people are also, what you get them actually matters. How much it costs actually matters, right? For my experience, that thoughtful present, preferably small, because I already have too many things, preferably meaningful, is really nice. If you got me something like a small perfume or something that's like what is it? Aromatherapy, yeah, a small aromatherapy thing or a small bowl or something like that. That's really precious. I'll look at it every time and think of you. I remember my mother-in-law got me some long underwear one year and she was like, what do I get him next year? And I said, long underwear is good. I can't keep buying that for you. And I said, I don't actually have a lot. And every time it's there, I think about what you gave me, right? It's actually really meaningful to me. But she also felt like the need to give a real present, right? So there's that interesting sort of need there. For Samuel, it was interesting this year. I actually 3D printed a puzzle box that is themed in the Legend of Zelda theme. So you have to rotate all these cylinders with the symbols from the game to actually unlock the puzzle box. And there's a secret inside, which I think was a note saying that I will take him anywhere for an amazing meal or something like that. We talked about going to Korean barbecue with you again because, Cade gets it.
That was good.
So, and you mentioned it and he mentioned so when he comes back, that's a lock. So it's something like that was made with love and that it was interesting and it challenged him to unlock it, which he did do way too fast. I guess it's the autism, right? I'll make it really hard next time and punish him. But it's things like that. And it actually took time. It actually took a bit of reflection. But what to do for the person who has everything and the people who have everything, some of whom are pretty touchy because they want something and they want something that they don't need for emotional reasons. I find that, complicated.
There's an interesting part there because it does seem like one thing that I've always found interesting is you have sometimes these people that are oftentimes billionaires and constantly working for more, like working towards trying to increase more profits. It's always more. Almost like there's this, when you get power or when you get money, the desire for more power and more money gets greater rather than less. And it's an interesting thing that there's this endless discontent of people. And I think we all have it, right? There's always something else. You can end up with all the things that you say, oh, you'll be happy when, or you'll be happy once we buy a house, or once we own the car, or everything will be good once we have this. And you just never, ever seem to get to this point where you have enough. It seems to be the part of the human condition that's the case. Yet, what's that? More money, more problems, like the lyrics or whatever. It definitely seems to be. Life seems a lot simpler and a lot happier with less, from my experience. And when I say that, I mean less material things. We tried this once at a Christmas. It didn't quite work, but the idea was instead of buying each other gifts, what we would do is we would buy each other like a handwritten note, kind of similar to what you were talking about, it was as an experience. This is like one IOU of we can do a picnic sometime this year, or we'll go out for dinner sometime this year or something. And it didn't quite work because it always ended up being everyone got busy during the year. And so I think we only ended up doing it a couple of times, but the intention was there. And I really liked that. We also tried the tier catalog or the Oxfam catalog, like the buy a well thing or whatever. And I was really excited about that. But like you said, there were people that had a very different reaction to that when we tried that. But what I'd really like to explore, and I was actually chatting to someone last week about this, is the idea of Christmas Day not necessarily being hey, let's wake up and get as many presents and then go to the next house and get as many presents as we can there, and so on and so forth. But whether we could volunteer in some way on the day. There's people that go out and run soup kitchens and things like that. And I think that would be something that I would be absolutely rapt if we could implement something like that in our family and have our kids. That's somewhat of what we do. We go out and try and help people or serve other people or do something like that. And I was saying we need to probably write something down now, and we need to set something and confirm that that's what our plan is now, because I think it's one of those things that can become a good sentiment of like, let's do this. And then a year happens and then all of a sudden it's Christmas and it's like, oh no. it just, time seems to fly by. And I think having the intentionality of actually setting the tradition and setting the expectation and actually intentionally, this is what we're going to do about Christmas, or this is how we're going to treat gifts, or this is how we're going to treat family and all that kind of stuff. I'm very cognizant of the fact that I probably need to do that now for next year, because otherwise time will just drift by and we'll just end up doing the same thing we always end up doing. And my grandparents passed away recently, and so a lot of the traditions used to be around them and the family. We used to do the same thing every year, and this year's probably the first year where everything's probably different. And so I think it's probably a good time, I'm just reflecting personally, to actually set some new traditions and try and be intentional, and even maybe reset that it's not about how many gifts, or we have to buy more gifts than last year, or at least the equivalent gifts of last year, or the monetary value or otherwise. But actually, maybe we could reset and go, let's buy one meaningful gift, or let's reduce the number of gifts and let's go and do things together or do things for other people.
Maybe we should transition the idea from gifts to giving. And in terms of the giving, like you describe, helping people, that is a gift to me. I help out every week at the People's Pantry in Flemington with driving boxes out to people and doing things for these people who are in a bit of need with the food and all of that. And I see it as I am helped. I get so much benefit from that. And just like your family, your kids especially, I think are going to get so much benefit from doing those things for other people. My mum has a tradition where we try to get people who don't have anywhere else to go on Christmas Day. Some of these people are repeat customers. Some people we might have just met, but it's a place where they can come, they can enjoy that experience, but we enjoy that. It's such a gift and a blessing to us. And this is something that'd be great to follow and see how you go.
I actually admire everything that you've said before, and I think I've said it to you before, and that's actually what has inspired me to really actually make an intentional effort to do that, because I think it's fantastic. And as you said, you reap the benefits. It's like you get the dopamine from helping the people. What is it? It's better to give than to receive. And it sounds like a throwaway, pithy statement. Most people do feel good, especially if you do buy a great gift that you do see the person go, this is really meaningful. Thank you very much. Like you see it on their shelf later on and it meant something to them. It gives you a great hit of dopamine.
I actually don't think there are any selfless acts. I think we can have acts that are self-helpful, that benefit the self, that aren't selfish. When I'm selfish, I don't think of anybody else. But there's things that I can do that I derive joy from. That is serving other people. And I think that's a good thing. And I think it's a wonderful thing to fill your cup that way. I'm just looking at the clock and I need to go do some stuff and not buy presents. I'm going to be giving to someone. That's a good thing. But thanks. This was really good food for thought. Really appreciate it, Cade.
Yeah, thank you. As I said, it'd be great to implement some of the things that you've implemented into my family. So, yeah. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Let's see how this goes. God bless you.